It's time to create a profitable, scalable, and sustainable studio for yourself and your students. Welcome to Dance Studio Empire. I'm Jen, dance studio owner for 30 years, running multiple locations with over 1,000 students, dance business coach turned mastermind mentor for dance studio owners, creatives, and leaders like you. I know you're committed to growing your studio and creating the time and financial freedom you most want, while also being the best in the industry with a reputation to match. I've coached hundreds of studio owners who have grown to 250, 500, and over 1,000 students using my signature studio scaled method. And in this podcast, I'll give you the clarity, strategy, and CEO mindset to help you do the same. Let's dive in.
Hello, Dance Fam, and welcome back to the podcast. It's really exciting to be back in your ears. I've had a couple of weeks off. I don't know if you've noticed, but yeah, I've just had to take some time. We've started our new round of the mastermind, and I've just really wanted to focus in and love on our members. And it's just taken my time and my energy, and when this happens, some things have to go. So it's been the podcast, but I am back and feeling quite reinvigorated about what's to happen moving forward. Again, been in some really great conversations with studio owners, and we'll be hitting on those different topics, including today's one is a topic that's just come up again in social media. That's why I'm covering it again. But yeah, I thought it feels like a great time where at the end of quarter one, which I'd love to check in and see how you're going. For our Southern Hemisphere studios, it's a big start to the year. A lot happens from that January through to the end of March. And I know for a lot of you, you're exhausted, and understandably. And that's why I really hope you do take some time and prioritize some time off over the Easter break. I know some of our studio owners are already on holidays or about to start. Some others, like us in New South Wales, we still do have a couple of weeks after the Easter break. However, just taking time to prioritize just yourself, step away from the business for a bit. I think it's really important to enable to keep our energy and our motivation and our health optimal as we continue to move forward into the year. But today I am going to be speaking about a topic that has been brought up again. I have covered it before in other episodes slightly. This is a little bit different, going into a little bit more specific, but I will reference those other podcasts that you can go back and listen to that should complement this as well. However, I'm going to be talking to you about 3 strategies to help manage and support your students' behavior. Because this is the reality of what we deal with day to day. The way students are taking classes these days is different and has changed. It will continue to evolve over time, but for now, what do we do? And it's hard and it is frustrating. I hear it, I feel it for you. I feel for myself, the older I get, the less patience that I find I'm having. But I'm really working on that myself. And I know this frustration is felt by quite a lot of teachers and studio owners. So let's just band together and come up with some solutions to try and combat that and make it easier for everyone. But what I thought I would do, I will start with, let's just quick recap on the type of students that are taking class these days. Why is it different? What are the changes? What are the expectations? So first thing, everything in all of our world, not just our children, but all of our world is now so fast and so instantaneous. People, including yourself, including myself, we just get what we want when we want it. There's no waiting anymore. And the kids now are that's all they know. So they don't know about having to wait for Christmas to get a new pair of dance shoes. They don't know about waiting for a birthday to be able to afford that new piece of uniform that they want. There isn't that anymore, because we are giving our kids what they want straight away. they're searching it up, they can order themselves. It's so easy now. So that is an interesting behavior when it comes into the studio, because we are teaching skills. We are teaching something that needs to be practiced over and over to achieve it properly. And so that's a foreign concept for a lot of our kids. And that's why they're getting frustrated and where they're starting to lose control and not be able to focus for as long. And I do put it down to that. However, it is a reality, so we have to work out ways to combat that. The other thing is they have access to so much stuff now, so much information. It's just at their fingertips, and it's really quick and easy. So if they want, again, they're looking for something, they just have to search it up and they can get it. So when there's no more like waiting or anticipation. It's, well, I want to know, I'm going to find out now. Where, the kids 10, 15 years ago, maybe even longer now, 20 years ago, it was just about, okay, I just have to trust that I'm going to find out what I want to know. I'm just going to have to trust and believe. So that is lost a little bit now in the classroom. The other thing is the parenting is different. I'm not going to say right or wrong. I'm not here to judge how people choose to parent their children. You do it the way you do. You have parents that do it the way they do. I certainly did it the way I did it. But it is different. And I think, trying to assess it from myself, it feels like the parents, from whether or not they believe this is why they're doing it, but from their actions and their conversations, it feels like, and it can give the impression that they don't trust us, or they're not respecting us as the studio owner or the teacher to be giving them the right advice for their child. So for example, they might want to put their child in a particular age group which they're not suited for, or put them in a particular level that they're not suited for. And so I find that now a lot of the parents are actually questioning our decisions, and we're like, no, this class isn't suitable for him. He should probably try this one first. And they're like, well, no, that doesn't suit us because of time, or no, his friends are in this class, so that's why we want to do this class. And so that type of conversation and action is being seen by the child as well. And so that to me just makes this feeling of them not trusting us, and then their kids come in, and then there's that lack of respect that comes along with when you don't trust someone. The other thing I'm seeing with parents is they're really just giving their children a lot of options. So instead of just saying to them, it's this or this, it's what would you like, and sort of opening the slather, which is, children can't make those decisions. They're not, their brains aren't mature enough to make that type of decision. They know what they like and they know what they don't like, but that also can change within a week as well. So my personal belief is that a parent should be making those type of decisions for their child and not allowing the child to. But again, these are the conversations that I am hearing in our reception area after a child's done a class. What do you think? What would you like? What would you like to do? That's not helping. That doesn't help us in the classroom either. And that also ties into that helicopter parenting where, this is not all parents. We certainly have parents that are like that, and they're just in and watching and constantly, I think they're missing like the big picture of the world because they're so focused in on what's happening and what's not happening with their child. However, that's how some people want to do it, which is totally fine. But again, it makes it difficult for us because they're just wanting to know everything. They're not, again, it comes back to trust. It comes back to that whole trust thing. So that's what I think is making it really difficult for us with this whole managing behaviors. And kids are getting away with more, and they're questioning more, and they're doing it in quite a disrespectful way. And it's hard. It is hard. I will also say this is probably not the majority of the kids in your class. There is probably 1, 2, or 3 that are the main offenders in each of your classes who appear to not be, behaving appropriately. But because they take so much of our time and so much of our attention, it feels like it consumes us as the teacher. So it feels like it's all kids are disrespectful, all kids are backchatting, all kids can't focus, which I don't believe to be true, because there are still some kids out there that do great, and there are some parents that are really great and supportive as well. So with that being said, ultimately it's now going to be about us, you as the teacher, you as the studio owner. What is it that we can do to try and make the situation more conducive to still teaching dance, still giving everything that you want to give to the kids, all of your kids in the class. So not just, the attention on the ones who are distracting, but, the kids that are there who really want to learn. All right, so I'm just going to break that down into 3 different strategies that I've used, which I would train my teachers in to use. It is something that's fluid because it is constantly changing. However, this is what we're working with at the moment. So you are more than welcome to give it a go, and hopefully, even if you just pick up 1 or 2 things, it might be just enough to help settle a situation in your classroom. Okay, the first thing we need to do is for us to take responsibility and give the students, give the parents a reason to trust and respect us. So we have to step up first. And how can we do this? This can be done in many ways. Remember, it's not even just about our words that we're using, but our body language is a big thing. So be aware of your body language when you are in situations with parents, when you are in the front of your kids in the classroom. Your body language speaks volumes. So just be aware of that. Some of the other little things that, well, they're little but can have a big impact, is knowing their name. So just making it a priority to know your students' names in the classes. I understand this can take sometimes a couple of weeks if you've got a whole bunch of new kids that have come in, or you've taken on a new class. It could take time, but it is just such a powerful thing. If you know the names of your students, you can control them so much better. And it's more just the fact that they know that you know that they're there. So if you're using their name, they've registered in their brain. It's like, okay, she knows I'm here. All right, so I have to behave, or I better be on my best behavior, or they're going to tell mom, things like that. So they know. And then if you want bonus points, knowing the name of the parents is another very big, powerful tool for you as well. And I always just go back to myself. So just even at my local gym, I go in and I don't make a big scene. I don't train with other people. I just go in by myself. But there are just a couple of people behind the counter that when I do walk in, they're just like, oh, hey, Jen, how are you? And I'm like, oh, I'm really well, thank you. And so, just even that acknowledgement of them saying my name, it doesn't matter either way, but it does make me feel better when they've acknowledged me by name. And so think of that as in the situation for your children in the class. I think it's really important. And then as a parent, even better. Okay, next thing, making sure that you're including everyone in your class, because it is very easy to you're focusing negative attention on those who are distracting. You can let those ones that just fly under the radar and not acknowledge them at all. And then there's the ones who are, really good and trying to, so they're trying for your attention because they're trying really hard. And so you're looking across the board at a lot of different dynamics in the classroom. You want to be able to make sure that you're making eye contact using each of their names throughout the lesson. And that's going to make sure that they all feel like they're being included in the class. So that if a parent says, oh, so-and-so, little Tammy doesn't feel like she's been in the front at all, you can combat that by saying, well, yes, every child gets to go in the front, and Tammy's in the front in the second chorus, standing next to Sophie. So, if you are making an effort that way, then they are feeling included, and it just stops those conversations from needing to happen. Okay. Being very aware of your words and the language that you're using. So remember, when you step into your class, the 3 things you want to know is who it is you're teaching, so the age, their ability, skill level, experience, why they are there, so why are you teaching them? So are they there for competitions? Are they there for exam work? Is it a rec class? Is it just because a whole bunch of friends get together on a Friday afternoon? Why is it that you're teaching them? And then the third point is, how can you then get the best out of them? So once you assess that, what's the best way to approach teaching these kids in order to achieve their goal? So you want to just make sure that you're choosing the words and you're choosing the language that is appropriate for who it is you're teaching. So just keep that in mind. The next thing is making sure that when you are being spoken to or someone's giving you a suggestion, an idea in class, just listen to that, listen to what they're having to say, and then respond. So just acknowledge that you've heard them. Don't abruptly dismiss an idea. So say they've come to you and say, I found a great song, I think we should do it, or I've just made up some choreography, I think we should add it to the dance. I know that can be frustrating at times, particularly if you're trying to get the class settled, but I just encourage you to just acknowledge, say, oh, that's a really good idea. Let's chat about it at the end of the class. Or, this is something we can definitely work with. Now's not the right time to talk, but we will definitely, tell me about it later. And so it's just basically that you've heard them and you've responded. And that's a form of mutual respect, right? So they've come to you thinking they've thought about the lesson, they've thought about you, they've thought of some ideas and they want to share that with you. So just be respectful in acknowledging that. And then finally, the last thing is just remembering those small things. So if they tell you they're going away on holidays or it's grandma's birthday on the weekend, if you can remember that and come back the next week and say, oh, how was grandma's birthday? Things like that, massive in that whole respect thing and the trust thing. And also just acknowledging the small things week to week. So say someone comes in with a new dance bag, or they've come in and they've got a beautiful hair in a beautiful ballet bun or something like that, which they wouldn't normally do. Just acknowledging that you see that you notice them. Then they've felt heard and seen, and that's all we want, right? It's then going to give you the base that you are confident when you're in front of those classes that you are giving the most respect to these kids. So then it's now up to them what they do. So this also brings me back to, remember, only you can control yourself and your response to things. You can't control other people. You can't control the way they respond. You can't control the way they act, what they say. You don't have that control. All you can do is be in control of yourself and make sure you're starting from a good starting point. Okay, that's the first part of the strategy. The next part, this is where you need to have really clear and direct expectations or rules for your classes. This may vary depending on the age, depending on the style, the experience, maybe even depending on the studio you're teaching at. For the teachers out there, you have to have your decision how you run your classes. And really there's no right or wrong. We will all run classes in different ways, but it has to be clear, and you have to make sure that your students know what that is, because you can have them, but if they don't know, they don't have anything to be guided by or compared to. And so I always go back to, if they're doing something that you don't want them to do, if you haven't told them, they can't get in trouble for it because they didn't know that that was a rule or an expectation. So make sure you set those really clear expectations. Deliver it clearly so they understand and know that they then understand. And then this is something that I would remind them of regularly. So maybe at the beginning of a dance year, it might be each week. Sometimes it can be throughout a lesson. You can be reminding them, just a reminder, this is what the expectations are. For example, I might start a class by saying, right, today we are going to learn more of our dance. Now I expect you to listen without talking to your friends while I teach you the choreography. You can practice in groups and individually when I tell you that it's time. We're going to write out the choreography in your dance journals because I expect you to come back next week and know what we did, applying all those corrections that I give you during the lesson. Does that sound okay to you? And so that is basically, I'm setting very clear expectation, and very clearly they know exactly what I want, and how they are going to achieve it. And then at the end, I'm just asking them the question and asking them for their permission. Does that sound okay? So then once they've said, yep, then they've sort of acknowledged that they've heard you, that they've listened. So that's something I would do regularly, all the time. Again, this will vary how that conversation goes, will vary with the age, but it's something for you to definitely work on. And the other part in step 2 of the strategy is to inform the parents. So tell them what the expectations are. Might be a bit trickier if you're a teacher versus studio owner, or vice versa. Like, it depends on the situation and the setup. But I've always found that asking the parents to reinforce what our expectations are and what the rules are is really helpful. And it's not only helpful for the child, but the parent, so the parent has a clear understanding as well. And it may be something like, I will say to a parent, so say they brought their child and they're feeling like, a little unsure, or was carrying on a little bit, or didn't want to let go of mum's leg or whatever. I might say something like, okay, so throughout the week, so it's been lovely to meet you. I'm so glad she came. Throughout the week though, just say to your child, next Monday, you're going to be going to TAP. Once you get there, I'm going to help you put your shoes on, and then I'm going to walk you over to Miss Jen, and then she's going to take you over to the other kids in the class, and you're going to have lots of fun learning new things. And so basically I'm just coaching the parent to start coaching the child, so giving them the ideas. And I am sure you have had that experience of the parent who gets to the studio door and, like, really loudly so everyone can hear, will say to their child, "Mummy's going now, don't miss me, it's going to be okay, you're going to be okay on your own because I'm going to go now, but don't worry, I'll be back, but don't miss me." And you're just like, oh, please just leave, the child's totally fine. So you probably know those parents. And so that's where I would try and just rein them in and just give them some suggestions that, maybe next week, if you could just say these few things before coming to the class, it's going to help. And so I do that. I still do that. Who knows? Anyway, that is just something that has worked for me. Okay, so that's the second strategy. Now, the third one is, what is it we actually do once we're in the classroom? How is it that we can support and understand these students and manage their behaviours? Okay, first thing, you need to stay calm and you need to stay in control. And I appreciate how hard this can be when you're at your wit's end. You've continually said something, there's continual disrespect or continual talking, or you're probably late at night, you've probably taught for hours and it's a Thursday and you're exhausted. I absolutely get that. My best advice for you is to really just maintain your calmness. You might not be calm on the inside, but to the students and to anyone, like even if there's parents around, because remember, there's always someone listening. There's always someone who can hear what's happening, even when you forget. The thing with you staying calm and in control is then not showing the child or the children who are, being challenging, that they're getting to you. You don't want them to see that. You just want to maintain your composure, and then you can deal with your own thoughts outside. But, in that situation, stay calm. Don't let them think or let them know that they are getting to you. Now, things I would do, first thing would be just to move them away from wherever they are. So if a child is being disrespectful or they're not listening, I would physically move them from one side of the studio to the other side of the studio. And I almost see it like it's a breaking their pattern. So they're focused on and fixated on doing whatever they're doing to be distracting. So by moving them, you've put a break in their brain to another area. And so sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't, but more than often it will, because they're like, oh, new situation. And it's almost re-triggers their brain. I don't know. I'm not a neuroscience. I'm not a psychologist, but this is just something that I found worked. And so it's the first and most easy thing to do in this situation. Next thing, like I mentioned before, using their name and making eye contact. So particularly if you are trying to discipline or you're giving a direct a direct direction to someone or telling them exactly what you want, use their name and make eye contact. So they are very clear that you are speaking to them, that you are seeing them, and so they know that if they choose not to do it, it's directly against what you've asked. I don't know, it just seems to work. The next thing is to acknowledge any positive behavior. So particularly for the offending children who, if they do something that's good or positive, if you can really highlight that and just compliment them. So thank you. I really appreciate how you're sitting there with your legs crossed right now, listening to me. Again, specifically if it's those children, if for some reason those particular children don't ever stop and listen, I always will highlight other people's positive behavior and I would talk about it and I'll say, I want to thank Zoe. Thank you so much for the way you are just standing there or practicing just how I asked. I really appreciate that. And I love seeing that. And so you're then acknowledging. So those kids are then seeing the behavior that you expect. Another thing. The other thing I would do would be just keep them moving. So sometimes if the kids are still for too long, their attention spans are a lot shorter now, as you know. Keeping them moving, keeping them challenged is another way to stop them from misbehaving sometimes. Or giving them a task, give them a job or a responsibility. Would you be able to put the scarves in the bag for me, please? And so they're like, yes. And so they're given a task. And so that's again, they're removed from that, the focus of being naughty or not listening. And throughout, reiterate your expectations, reiterate what you want from them, how you want them to behave, what your expectations are all the time. Okay, that's in general. However, what happens when you get those really disobedient students, which sadly we're seeing more and more now, and it's very hard to deal with because we are powerless. Like literally, if a child, and it did actually happen to me last year, and I had said to a child, I can't remember what I told her, but you need to take your tap shoes off, and she just looked at me and said, no. I'm like, okay, well, I can't physically restrain her and rip her tap shoes off. However, what is it that I can control? And so then I just took steps to saying, okay, you can leave your tap shoes on, but you have to sit here and don't move. And so, you work with the situation. But what I'm saying is I do know there are those kids that just, blatantly don't do what you say. So how do we manage those? The first thing is to make sure that you're escalating appropriately. So each of these steps is, in order. You just don't jump straight to kicking them out to the curb, which I don't actually suggest. I'm just joking. Okay, so the first thing I would do is definitely move them within the studio, like I mentioned before. If they're with someone who, they sort of work off each other, I would remove them from that person. But again, even if it's just them being disrespectful or mucking up or not listening, I would still move them anyway to try and break that pattern in their brain. If that doesn't work, the next thing I would do is have them sit to the side, so sit out of the dance but staying in the studio, just so they're now not allowed to be part of the class. Hopefully they sit there, they'll probably be spinning around on their bottoms or shaking a drink bottle or whatever they can to get that attention. And I just try to ignore that behavior. As long as it's not dangerous to them or dangerous to the others, I just try and ignore the behavior. I keep focusing on the class, keep moving forward. Now, if that was not to work, so it's still now you've just decided this is still not enough, the next step that I would do is then remove them from the studio. This needs to be safe and only if it's possible. So it's not going to be possible in every studio. I get that 100%. If it is, then this would be my next step. So I was actually used as the threat in the classroom for my teachers. So if they've gone through the steps and it's like, okay, we're now going to have to go out and speak to Miss Jen, or you now need to go and sit with Miss Jen. And that was 9 times out of 10 was enough to have them behave. Otherwise, the teacher would bring them down. So again, following through. So all about following through with the threats. And they would bring them and they would have to then sit there, and then I would have that conversation with them, like, what are you doing? Why are you behaving this way? Do you feel that this is right? So I would then have this conversation and assess with each child then how that works. So for most of them, that was enough to just pull them back into line. Then I would decide what an appropriate time was, to take them back into the studio, try again, and then that was the cycle of how we managed the discipline that way. You also have to decide at this point, and maybe this isn't a decision for you as a teacher, but maybe for the studio owner, at what point does the parent then become informed? Because I know as a parent, if my child was being blatantly disrespectful or rude or distracting a class, I would like to know about that, because then I have my own consequences for my child. And so you then need to make that decision whether at what point the parent then gets informed. If it's getting to this point, this is where I would do it, because it's now becoming a distraction for the other dancers in the class. It's a distraction for the teacher. It's not fair, so it's taking away. So at the point where it starts to diminish the experience for others is where the parent needs to be informed. And so then that brings us to the fourth point of this, is like, after these situations happen, like if it's escalated to this point, I definitely have a discussion with the child, but I would also bring the parent in and talk about options moving forward. And this is also like escalated in an appropriate manner. So it may be that, to start with, that the parent speaks to their child first. And you can say, you need to have the conversation with your child that when she's in the classroom, she needs to not backchat, she needs to listen and do as she's told, that type of thing. It may be that the parent needs to sit in on the class, which I know is not great as a teacher, because none of us, well, I'm assuming most of us don't love having parents sitting in the classroom while we're trying to teach, but it might be enough if that parent, if it's a parent who really cares, their kids at dancing, then they will sit there and then make sure they behave. Or finally, this has happened before, I've had this conversation over my years and just say to the parent and the child, maybe it's just time to take a break from dance and try something different. I know for a lot of us, not that we never want to get rid of student numbers, of course, because we're constantly trying to grow 100%. However, sometimes you have to really weigh up whether it is worth the stress and the distraction of having that particular child in the studio versus not having them there. And then I have even had to insist sometimes and just say, it's really not working. Why don't you go and try something else for a bit? And then come back in 6 months, 12 months and see. Generally, if a child, here I am again, not always, but generally if a child is being disruptive or not listening, there's a good chance that they don't want to be there. There's a good chance. I know there's definitely attention issues for sure that comes into it, but on the whole, if a child in your class is not listening, is not joining in, is not making the environment conducive, they probably just don't want to be there. And so do we really want to keep kids that don't want to be there? Because it ruins the experience for everyone. So that is a tough conversation that sometimes needs to be had. It's not easy, but we just have to continue to work with what we have in front of us. Okay, so they are the 3 strategies that I would be using. So first one, just make sure they have a reason to trust and respect you, and how are you going to do that? And then I listed those points. Next thing, making sure you have those very clear expectations for each of your classes, and make sure that it's delivered clearly and respectfully, of course, and that your students understand it, informing their parents to make sure that they can help with that reinforcement as well. And then finally, those strategies, so escalating appropriately, do the best you can within your power in the classroom, moving them away, using their name, acknowledging that positive behavior, keeping them busy and challenged. But then if it does not get any better, or the behavior is deteriorating, we then need to move through those steps of removing them from the classroom and then getting the parent involved. And sadly, this is just something that isn't going to go away. It's not going to go back to how it was. The pace of life for our kids and for yourself is just not slowing down. It is only accelerating, and it feels like it's accelerating faster and faster. So it really is just up to us to continually keep adapting. Now, I hope this has been helpful for you. Please know that I feel you when you're in that classroom. I understand, I know how hard it is when you've done everything that you've been taught, everything that you knew as a child growing up, and you're still struggling. But hopefully these tips have helped, something you can just even try to see if it changes. Because remember, each of your kids are so different and they're going to respond in different ways. But I'm just arming you with some tools. Hopefully it works. I would, would love to hear if you do try something and you do see a change, you do notice a change. I would love that feedback. All right, everyone, it's been so great to be back. I hope you have a beautiful long weekend for Easter. Those of you who are going on break, enjoy your holidays. Get ready for Q2. So many exciting things coming up with me and some events that are coming up within the year. I'm super excited to tell you about. So make sure you're following along Instagram, which is _JenDalton_. That's probably the best place to follow along. And also I do send out a fortnightly email. If you would like to get on the list, I will leave the link below and you can get on that list. Otherwise, have a great break and I will catch you next week.